it's Drybear. Diablo 4's first expansion, Vessel of Hatred, launches tonight. So wanted to catch up people who either have been playing for a while or maybe haven't touched the game since launch on what's new in Vessel of Hatred to look forward to. A brief reminder that there are new drops and things you can get on live streaming. I am a streamer and content creator, so if you wanted to get the Twitch drops for Diablo, I will be streaming Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred intermittently as things come out throughout the month. So you'll be able to pick these up. And there also is a pretty sweet mount and mount armor you can get for the supportive streamer campaign, which you'll get by donating 2 or 4 Twitch subs to any streamer that is streaming the game in the Diablo 4 category. I will be included in that, but if there's another streamer you want to support, you can do that as well. And that content will be available by going into game and going into Twitch and donate to anyone that's in the category at the time. Also, a great time to remind people that the pre-order bonuses are going to be going away once the game launches, and it does launch tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. So about half a day before these go away. So if you haven't pre-ordered or you haven't picked up a version of the game for Vessel of Hatred, then this is just a reminder. If you're going to do that anyway, you may want to consider doing it before it launches. The only thing that comes with the pre-order bonus is going to be this pet. Pets are an addition to the game that recently got added over the last year or so that will pick up gold, materials, and things like that for you. It won't pick up items, but it will pick up all the things that go into your material stash or your gold, and they're just cute and fun little things that you can interact with. And this is going to be the pre-order bonus. So if you get Vessel of Hatred before it launches, you will get this little leopard pet. There are 3 versions of the game: Standard, Deluxe, and Ultimate. The Deluxe Edition will give you wings. I think this is probably the most unique aspect of the pre-orders if you're looking to get something out of it. So these 3 are going to be there. You also get another one for the Ultimate Edition. Now, most of these other cosmetics, like the Battle Pass that you'll pick as part of the Deluxe or Ultimate Edition, or even the extra Platinum, the in-game currency you can get as part of the Ultimate Edition, you can obviously get those on your own separately if you decide you want them. And a lot of these cosmetics can be earned in different versions or in different ways based on the Battle Pass or through the content itself. And even the special mount, the cat mount, this is going to be the easiest, simplest way to get the new mount type in the game. Everyone's gonna be riding horses, but if you bought the Deluxe Edition or the Ultimate Edition, you will get this this cat mount. But there is another mount earnable for the hardest, one of the hardest contents in the game, the new 4-man co-op raid dungeon. You'll be able to unlock another version of the cat, which is pretty cool. Which looks like this, but again, this is gonna be the 4-man raid dungeon. It requires co-op. I think you need at least 2 people to complete the Dark Citadel, so you'll have to complete that there, and you have to complete it on the highest difficulty as well. So it's going to be a little bit a ways away. So if you wanted to have the cat mount right away, your only option really is the Deluxe Edition or the Ultimate Edition. Now let's talk about what's new in Vessel of Hatred and what you might want to come back for Diablo 4, or maybe even start Diablo 4 in the new expansion if you're looking for it. The premier piece of content is going to be the brand new class, the 6th class, the Spiritborn, which plays very differently from some of the base classes. It looked at first kind of like a witch doctory / monk kind of gameplay, but it does have enough variety inside of it. You can actually create some new skills, some new combos, some new builds out of it, and it feels very much like a melee caster mix in a lot of ways, which feels different than a lot of the other builds that we're seeing in the game right now. The next major selling point is going to be the brand new campaign for the new area and the new storyline. I think whether you're a big fan of the end game of Diablo 4 or the growth the game has had over the last year since it launched, I think there's definitely a lot to be said about how good the original campaign was for the game overall. And playing through that at least once, I think, is a worthwhile experience and was super fun with the level of detail, the kind of cutscenes and everything they have going on with that. And also we get to see the continuation of Mephisto's storyline, how this crystal ends up dividing the world and the destruction that it creates and all of that. So we know the campaign's going to be a great time regardless, and I think that's going to be another big selling point for picking up the expansion and playing through it. The next big selling point is the new region. For the longest time, we've had just these regions available, and they all have different art sets and tile sets and different areas, and they come with new dungeons as well. So we have these kind of base ones. But with the expansion, we are getting a new region being magically attached to the continent. When you're in the game right now, before the expansion launches, you actually can see that the connection points of where this landmass was, but obviously wasn't, you can't zoom out or go into that area of the map. So Nuhantu is being added to the new area as a region. We're getting a bunch of new content, new areas, new environment art, and things that connect to the world, which makes the world a little bit bigger. Another cool aspect is that yet. Yes, we are getting a new class with the Spiritborn, but they're also adding new abilities to the existing classes. So even if you're going to be a returning player or a player that's continuing to play, you've been playing the same class, and you will be playing the same class you've always played in the new expansion, you will at least have access to new abilities that you can use in that class to create new builds along with the new gear and new uniques. Barbarians are getting a new skill called Mighty Throw, where they have a bit of a range attack that has some AoE element attached to it. Druids are getting Stone Burst, which is more elemental on the earth side, which I love for Druid. Necros get an AoE called Soul Rift, which will give them an opportunity to play with some of their other mechanics a little more cleanly. Rogues get an ability called Dance of Knives, which in the beta was insanely overpowered. You can actually get it to cover the entire screen. And while this might get nerfed for launch, I'm guessing it'll fall into a decent place regardless. And lastly, we get True Familiars for the Sorceress or Sorcerer, which will allow them to play with more pet playstyle. They've also made a bunch of changes to progression, item progression, level progression, and the Paragon as well. And the first one to talk about is that they've lowered the level cap from level 100 down to level 60. And what this does for you is it means that you can just level to the max level and then focus on your end game progression rather than trying to level into tier 3, level into tier 4, reset your gear, start over again, and have this long grind to level 100, where really most players ended up reaching to level 70 to 80 and then stopping for the season and not actually reaching level 100. So being able to stop at 60 for the level and then just purely focusing on your character's power, focusing on getting ancestrals, focus on making your character better rather than trying to just slowly grind through the level, I think is going to be a nice improvement. Now, they also had some new modes and new opportunities for gameplay jump into the game, which is pretty big. They added in season 5 the Infernal Hordes, which was a big way to level. I think that those are going to be downplayed a little bit in the expansion, but we're also going to have those available as part of your experience. And they also added in the Pit, which is kind of like this place to just go in and farm mobs and clear. It gets harder and harder as you go up. And I think this is overall just going to make a lot of the pain points for leveling up originally go away going into the expansion. Because before, you really had to get through like to level 50 to unlock tier 3, then you reset all your gear to Sacred, then you would go up to 75, reset all your gear to Ancestral, and then go on this long grind to get all the way up to level 100. But now that they're focusing on activities like Horde, Pits, having all this, plus the new content we'll talk about in just a second that is even more expansive than those, it means that your leveling and progression is going to be a lot more streamlined and focused on the right things. And that's something that's worth highlighting even longer, which is going to be the idea that they're removing that weird stepwise sawtooth function of you going from level 50 to 75 to 100, where before you would throw away all your normal gear and get sacred gear, then you would throw away all your sacred gear and get ancestral gear. Now, since they're removing sacreds from the games, you don't have that same step up. You're basically going to be getting to Torment level 1 and then focusing on getting your gear, getting your end game gear, putting your build together and finishing it that way rather than trying to find these weird points where you feel like investing in your character is necessary to progress, but it's also a huge waste because you're going to be throwing away that content, throwing away that gear almost immediately as soon as you get to the next step. So locking at level 60, allowing us to skip Sacred and go straight to Ancestral, and the fact that Torment 1 is going to include all of the loot that you would get in Torment 4, just with a lower drop rate. It means that you can sit in Torment 1 and get your full endgame build completed and hit level 60 quite easily without being stuck on the endless treadmill. They're also going to be updating the way the Paragon system works. It's not going to be a complete revamp. And I think they have mentioned that they want to just, redo this system at some point in the long future. But as it stands right now, what they want to do is they want to make Paragon boards a little bit more interesting and more viable. So what they're doing, at least in a short version, I'm not going to go in depth on all the changes, but what they're doing is they're limiting the amount of boards to be 5. So before, you could decide whether you want less boards but more points in each board, or more boards with less points in each board, and you would have this crazy system of having multiple boards. They're going to be locking the amount of boards at 5. They're also going to be changing some of the nodes that feel a little too specific, which means that most builds, except for specific builds, skip over them entirely, and they want to make some of these nodes a little more accessible as you push through. They're also going to making it so glyphs can level up all the way to 100, and they also have a larger radius with a bigger impact, which means that your glyphs are going to have a bigger part of your gameplay overall, and some of the nodes are going to be a little more interesting in how you choose, because it won't be as known as you pass through. Like, of course you're going to get this, of course you're going to get that. Hopefully their vision is that you have a little bit more choice with the nodes around, and the glyphs make a bigger impact. Now, we talked about there being new activities. There's a new raid, there's a new time attack or timed like specific speedrun style dungeon that you'll be doing as well, but they're also going to be reworking a little bit on the availability of resources from different activities that existed before. I'm sure if you're used to Diablo 4, or at least you played during the launch period or in the past seasons, you're used to doing hell tides and doing nightmare dungeons. What they've done is they've shifted the glyph farming to a different area, and they've added in material drops for nightmare dungeons. It kind of felt like you had to do nightmare dungeons, but it was a little bit too singular because you were only leveling and only getting glyph levels, but you weren't getting other things your account needed. So now having materials inside of the nightmare dungeon is a big plus. Next up is a mainstay for the last two Diablo franchises, the installments for it, and that is going to be the addition of Mercenaries. And so you'll have the choice of, I think, 4 different Mercenaries. You'll unlock the first one as part of a quest, and you'll do a couple more quests to unlock the others. And the idea for Mercenaries is that you will be able to use them to supplement your current playstyle. I think not only are they adding multiplayer game modes and options for you to play with other players in Diablo 4 more consistently, but I think they also want to limit how hard set your builds are because of the requirement of you being alone, right? Whether you're playing a DPS Sorc or you're playing a tanky Druid, in most cases you need enough survivability to be able to survive, which means that you can't supplement that with other characters or other players, especially if you're playing solo. So with the mercenary system, they'll have their own talent tree, so you'll be able to specialize how they play. You'll have a way to make a mercenary that's very tanky, a mercenary that's very bursty, a mercenary that's very like control-based, and hopefully with that it opens up more play styles, because it means that if you're playing a bursty character that can't frontline, adding a frontline mercenary when you're playing solo will make a big difference. Vice versa, if you're playing a very tanky build that can't burst down elites, maybe adding in a bursty mercenary that does damage that way can make a big difference. So hopefully that ends up working that way. And with their own talent tree and their own progression means that we could possibly have that build come together and have that dream come alive with mercenaries as part of the process. But that remains to be seen. It's very possible that these are either too weak or too strong, but it does seem like they have enough in their kit and enough in their talent trees to make a big difference in our overall playstyle. And I think it's a nice touch for a lot of people that play exclusively solo, which in ARPGs is a lot of people. Next, let's talk about the new endgame activities, especially the new raid, which is a group required activity. It is going to be multiplayer, and along with this, they're also including something that the game has desperately needed for a long time. You know, I don't even have to talk about all the times that you could have used it. Even in the base game launch where you were just doing general activities, having a group finder would be awesome. But they are adding a party finder / group finder for the launch tonight with the Vessel of Hatred. And for this, you'll be able to put up a party, and you can put whatever you want. You can say, you know, clearing ultimate areas, world areas, doing nightmare dungeons, doing speed runs, doing the pit, doing whatever. You can put that on here on the party finder. You can find people that are at a similar level to you, a similar growth to you, and they're looking to do the same activity, and you can join together with them. Hopefully this works the way it should, in that it brings people together to complete activities. If you're playing solo, a lot of people I know in Diablo 4 right now, their friends have moved on to other games, so they're looking for people to play with. You'll be able to play the new content with this, and it also will make finding groups for the new raid dungeon a lot easier, because you'll be able to kind of put up a post saying, I want to do this, and based on people that are on your server region or with your similar like mindset, you'll be able to find people this way. So that leads us into the next piece of content, which is going to be the Dark Citadel, which is the first raid. They don't call it a raid, but it's a raid. Let's not joke around. It is a raid group. So it's a group of 2 to 4 players going in to complete a very hard pre-made built kind of endgame content. So the mechanics in this require at least 2 players. There's going to be some mechanics where you will have to have 1 player in the outside world doing mechanics and 1 player on the inside world doing mechanics. And if you don't have a second player to do that, you won't be able to complete it. So you need at least 2 players to complete the new raid, the Dark Citadel. They did mention that the Dark Citadel, the raid, is going to be focused on 4-player content though. They recommend 4 players. You can play it with 2 if you'd like, or 3, but 4 is going to be what it's built for. And on top of that, I think they mentioned that they will not be scaling the content either, which means that it's going to be a set 4-man requirement. If you wanted to do a pre-made of 2 to make it even harder on yourself, you certainly could, but it's going to be built for 4 players. And I think this is going to be the new end game. Now, what's challenging about multiplayer kinds of activities in games like this, like ARPGs, especially forced multiplayer, is it could be a double-edged sword. It could be insanely awesome. The rewards are super worth it and the experience is awesome. But as we know, with multiplayer interactions, there could be situations where people enter into the Dark Citadel unprepared, or they disconnect, or there's all kinds of griefing or issues going on with other players. So this could end up being more of a downside than upside. There are some cool rewards we talked about earlier. You can get the cat mount plus some cool cosmetics from the Dark Citadel, as well as some decent drops as well. But it also could go the other way in that it turns to a grief fest and there's not enough people playing it, and people just get what they need from it and they don't queue for it anymore. So we'll have to see if this actually turns out well. This is going to be their first iteration of a 4-player raid style encounter, and I think this is what the game has always needed. I think they need more Lost Ark style, MMO style encounters that bring the game together, and this is a step in that direction. So hopefully it's at least passable and very enjoyable from that process. The next piece of brand new content that they're bringing in Vessel of Hatred is going to be the Kurast Undercity, and this one is a much more dynamic, timed activity. So this is a speedrun activity. You will be going through time. It's kind of more like Greater Rifts, but not really. It has a little bit of the temple aspect from like Path of Exile, a lot of it mixed in between. So this is a time-specific dungeon that you'll want to complete. You'll go through different floors and different tiers. You'll unlock different content, buffs, debuffs, things like that, and it will change up the flow and layout as you go through it. So that's why I say it's kind of more like Path of Exile Temple, and that you'll be able to move through it in different ways and get different experiences from it as you go through Kurast. And I think this is probably going to be a Gauntlet 2.0. It doesn't seem like they're too happy with the Gauntlet and the leaderboard function that it has provided. This definitely has more of a feel to it where you're like racing against time, trying to get the best score. You're definitely trying to increase the time that you have, and the better your build is, the faster you move. You have that kind of adrenaline rush coming with Kurast Undercity, and hopefully, again, this is just a better evolution of the Gauntlet they're able to bring into forward patches, and if this gets enough good feedback, then hopefully they can keep iterating on it to make it better and better. Next, let's talk about Runewords, which is another way to specify and control your overall playstyle. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have not played the Runewords in the Diablo 2 Resurrection. I did play Diablo 2 for years and years, and Runewords was one of the best additions to the game. It made the game so much more interesting, and I do believe that a lot of the basic system, like gem systems that they have in Path of Exile, were inspired a lot by the original Diablo 2 Runewords system in a lot of ways. So I think this is going to be a nice addition for the game. However, this is probably one of the few systems in the Vessel of Hatred update that I'm not too optimistic about. I feel like it's very dumbed down and super simplified in ways that may not be super good. So let's talk about what Runewords are. Basically, there will be runes that you will collect, and they go as a like plug system, like a wall outlet and a plug. You'll have a trigger condition and a benefit you get when that condition is met. So you'll be able to choose how it gets triggered, and you'll be able to choose what you get when the effect is triggered, and you can have upwards of 2 different pairs of Runewords equipped at one time, and these will take the socket for gems on 2 socket item pieces that you have. So up to 2 pairings of Runewords you can have equipped. You'll get a bonus. You'll have that equipped and given to you. And so far, at least on the PTR, the Runewords have been, like a couple of them have been insanely strong, and most of them have been pretty trash. So there's some balancing that goes into that as well, but I feel like it's also just a very oversimplified system. It could just be that you pick the best Runeword and you have that in your build, and that's just the end of it. There's no customization. Doesn't unlock new things. You can see right here, like the pairing they have shown on this presentation is when you cast a skill with a cooldown, you gain crit chance, right? So it's very straightforward, very simple. You can choose the pairing on that, but they also removed a bunch of the runes that are in the current PTR that weren't being used. They nerfed some of the ones that were overpowered, and they possibly will just keep it simple. So I think as is, it's probably one of the weaker systems they're bringing into Vessel of Hatred going into the expansion launch, and hopefully it gets better over time, and it might just be something that you just have as alongside the gem system as part of your customization, but it is another avenue for customizing your character build as you get closer and closer to endgame. And that's a big part of the expansion coming through. They're not making any they're not addressing the inventory size or the stash size. There's still going to be some core issues from Diablo 4 that were there before. They're going to continue onward. I think that there's still going to be some issues. If you have a fundamental issue with the game going forward, as some people do, then I think this is going to be something that you may want to watch and see. But I think this is, as has been every season since the launch of Diablo 4, the best version of Diablo 4. There's a brand new class to play. There's a new region to jump into. There's new builds. There's even some general quality of life that they're including, like being able to auto-dismantle normal items that you pick up that will have no value overall, the level 60 cap, and the fact that you can get all endgame items in Torment 1, so you can hit level 60, enter Torment 1, and you can get your full build online without having to challenge yourself to Torment 2, 3, or 4. You probably don't even need to do the Raid Citadel on the highest difficulty if you wanted to, so you can have that new content, have the new builds on opportunities, new uniques, new legendaries, and everything coming together. So I think regardless, if you're somewhat interested in the game, it's probably worth doing the campaign playthrough, play through the base level of the expansion, and just see where it goes from there, because the game certainly has been improving steadily over the last year and a half. But of course, let me know what you think about it down below. What do you think about the expansion and what's coming to the game? And is it going to be something that the game is needing? And is it something that is going to make the game continue to be better over time? If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.